Deathworlders, simple homework. Stumps, the galaxy's top scientists, best HFY stories. The galaxy had always viewed Earth's inhabitants, the so-called Deathworlders, with a mix of awe, fear, and, occasionally, disdain. After all, humans had a strange way of thriving where no other species could, on a planet filled with extreme environments, predatory beasts, and volatile natural forces. Their ability to not just survive but thrive on such a dangerous world made them an enigma to the more advanced species across the stars. It was this very trait that caused the galaxy's most renowned scientists to come together for what they thought would be a simple experiment. They had underestimated the Deathworlders yet again. It all began when a group of high-ranking galactic researchers, from a range of species, each with lifespans longer than a human's and intellects considered far superior, decided to test the limits of humanity's perceived basic abilities. They set up a project in the hope of learning more about how these seemingly primitive creatures could exist in such perilous conditions. The experiment was simple, a homework assignment. Let's see if we can finally understand how Deathworlders think and process complex problems, said Deathworlders, an ancient and highly respected Xynthian, a species known for their logic-based thought processes. We'll give them a standard intellectual challenge from our own education systems. The challenge was based on logic puzzles that required pattern recognition, mathematical reasoning, and problem-solving, tasks that had been easy for their species from the beginning of their education. The task was transmitted to Earth via a sophisticated communication network that could bypass the language barrier. A simple set of logic puzzles appeared on Earth's most popular online educational platforms. The scientists had no doubts that humanity would either fail or simply not engage with the puzzles, dismissing them as too difficult or impractical. What they didn't expect was that human ingenuity would turn the puzzle into something completely unexpected. 2 days later, the results were in, and they were not what the researchers anticipated. Human children, of all ages, from around the globe, had completed the puzzles at an astounding rate. Not only had they solved the puzzles quickly, but they had also done so in ways that no one had expected. Instead of approaching the tasks in a systematic, methodical way as other species would, the humans solved them using sheer creativity, out-of-the-box thinking, and unconventional methods. The most shocking part was that many of them had used completely nonsensical solutions, answers that were not only valid but also entirely different from the accepted norms of problem-solving, where the galaxy's top minds would see a puzzle as a problem to be solved with one perfect answer. Humans saw it as an opportunity for innovation and play. One child, aged 9, had solved a complex puzzle by drawing a picture of a laughing monster on the paper, explaining that the shape of the monster's smile revealed the answer. It was a solution so absurd that it defied reason, and yet, it worked. Another child, during an online live stream, demonstrated how the correct answer was to simply refuse to participate, explaining that the puzzle itself was an insult to human intelligence and that humans weren't bound by the constraints of galactic logic. Across the galaxy, the top scientists gathered to discuss what had just happened. They were stunned. Their understanding of intelligence, logic, and problem-solving had been completely shattered by the most unpredictable beings in the universe, humans. What is going on? Deathworlders asked, his voice quivering for the first time in centuries. How are they doing this? An Agathan researcher from a neighboring planet spoke up. They are breaking all the rules. They don't see the challenge as a puzzle to be solved. They see it as a riddle to be laughed at. Their answers don't follow any pattern we can recognize. That's it, another scientist exclaimed. It's not about solving problems the way we do. It's about finding the most human solution possible. No logic, just creativity. They're thinking outside the box, and I don't think they're bound by the same limitations we are. For the first time in galactic history, the researchers found themselves stumped by the very species they had underestimated for so long, and with each new human answer that defied the rules of their carefully constructed puzzles, the galaxy's best minds slowly began to realize something that should have been obvious all along. Humanity wasn't just surviving in a dangerous galaxy. They were thriving precisely because they didn't follow the same patterns of thinking as every other species. They were unpredictable, resourceful, and impossible to box in. The Deathworlders had, once again, turned the tables on the galaxy. And the most remarkable thing? They had done it by simply being themselves. The galaxy had underestimated humanity for the last time. From this point on, they knew there was no puzzle, no challenge, and no limit that could contain the chaotic brilliance of Earth's children. The news of humanity's unorthodox victory spread like wildfire across the stars. Each new report coming in about the puzzle-solving frenzy sparked astonishment, disbelief, and a tinge of fear. For centuries, the galaxy's most intelligent beings had believed themselves the pinnacle of mental achievement. Yet here were humans, young, unrefined, seemingly chaotic, demonstrating a level of brilliance they could scarcely comprehend. But what truly baffled the galaxy was the ripple effect that came next, an explosion of creativity and innovation across Earth. It was as though the success of the homework assignment unlocked a dormant potential in humanity, a previously hidden force that no one, not even the humans themselves, had fully realized. Back on Earth, the first signs of the change were subtle. A few weeks after the puzzle challenge, small but significant discoveries began to surface. Inventors in the farthest reaches of the planet, people who had once struggled to be taken seriously, were now seeing their wild ideas suddenly work. A group of teenagers in a small town in New Zealand had developed a prototype for a clean energy device, based on an unconventional algorithm that no one in the scientific community had ever considered. It wasn't the result of years of study or refinement, it was simply the result of thinking weirdly. In laboratories, researchers who had once followed strictly defined methods of problem-solving were now beginning to embrace the chaos. Instead of relying on rigid protocols, they began to experiment with ideas that felt wrong or absurd. The results? Breakthroughs. An advanced form of quantum computing had been discovered, not through cold logic, but by randomly testing variables no one had thought to try. But it wasn't just in the world of science. Artists, musicians, and creators across Earth were producing works so groundbreaking that they began to attract the attention of the galaxy's cultural elite. Abstract sculptures that played with perception in ways no one had dared to before. Music that defied structure and flowed like raw emotion. Literature that did not follow plots or tropes, but instead veered into the realm of pure imagination. Humanity was beginning to create on an entirely new level, where logic took a back seat to pure, unfiltered expression. Meanwhile, back in the Galactic Council chambers, the most prestigious minds were now scrambling to understand the sudden surge in human creativity. Dr. Vors and his colleagues found themselves in constant debate. How is it possible? Dr. Vors muttered. How are they unlocking the fundamental laws of the universe by breaking them? This should be impossible. They're not adhering to the principles we've spent eons perfecting. An Auguthan physicist who had studied human behavior closely raised a hand. Perhaps it's not the rules themselves that are important, but their willingness to abandon them when necessary. Humans don't see limitations. Where we see barriers, they see opportunities. A young researcher from the Starborn race, who had spent decades studying human psychology, nodded. They have something we do not. Something essential. They have freedom. True freedom in their thinking. It's not constrained by the need for perfection or consistency. It's chaos. Dr. Vors said, narrowing his 4 eyes. Pure, unbridled chaos. But perhaps it's genius. The Auguthan physicist responded softly. Maybe we need to learn to embrace that chaos as they do. The galaxy's finest minds began to grapple with an unsettling thought. Humanity's greatest strength lay in their willingness to break free from the shackles of predictability. They didn't rely on the same tools that other civilizations had used for millennia. Instead, they trusted in their own instincts, creativity, and, at times, sheer madness. The very things that others considered errors were the qualities that propelled them forward. As the months passed, humans continued to surprise everyone. Diplomatic meetings, which had always been rigid and governed by strict protocols, were now chaotic affairs. Diplomats from Earth would show up uninvited, speak out of turn, and challenge established rules of engagement in ways that left others stunned. Yet, somehow, these rogue strategies often led to agreements that no one else could have reached. The Galactic Council had to admit, their previous assumptions about human culture and intelligence were woefully outdated. They had tried to mold humans into their image, but what they had learned was that humanity could not, and would not, be controlled. And as the galaxy struggled to come to terms with this new reality, Humanity took it all in stride. They weren't the obedient species the galaxy had thought they were. They weren't the intellectual equals of their peers, either. But they were something the galaxy had never expected: unpredictable, uncontainable, and, perhaps most terrifying of all, adaptable. The Deathworlders had once again defied expectations, and, this time, they weren't going to let anyone forget it. It wasn't long before Earth's reputation shifted. What had once been a dangerous backwater planet, home to a species whose biggest claim to fame was surviving their hostile environment, was now regarded with a mix of awe and suspicion. Earth's growing influence in the galactic scene began to reshape the very fabric of the galaxy. Other species began to realize something important: humanity's strength wasn't just in surviving adversity, it was in the way they embraced it, transformed it, and made it their own. Humanity had stumbled upon the greatest discovery of all. They had found the key to unlocking untapped potential within themselves and others: the freedom to break the rules. And that, the galaxy now knew, was humanity's greatest gift. As Earth's influence grew, the galaxy's long-standing powers began to worry. What had once been a minor player in the intergalactic sphere was now at the forefront of nearly every major conversation, innovation, and conflict. The Deathworlders' unpredictable brilliance had forced the established civilizations to reassess everything they thought they knew about intelligence, progress, and survival. Humanity's influence reached further than anyone had expected. It wasn't just through innovation, diplomacy, or scientific breakthroughs, it was also in the way Earth had approached warfare. While most species had developed highly structured, methodical strategies, humanity had a different approach: chaos. They called it asymmetrical warfare, and it was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The first major test came when a fleet of Trelzari, a species known for their merciless and highly organized military strategies, threatened to annex a neighboring system. The Trelzari, renowned for their ability to predict every possible move in battle, were confident that no one could challenge them. They had seen humanity as nothing more than primitive creatures, easily defeated with proper planning. But humans didn't fight the way they expected. A small, ragtag fleet of human ships appeared in the system, and the Trelzari were immediately thrown off balance. There were no predictable battle lines, no advanced tactics, just pure, disorienting chaos. The humans attacked from unexpected angles, using every trick in the book: fake signals, decoy ships, feints, and bizarre, seemingly nonsensical maneuvers. The Trelzari couldn't keep up. They tried to calculate human moves, but the humans didn't follow any discernible pattern. It was unpredictable, untraceable, and ultimately, far more effective than anyone had imagined. The Trelzari fleet was forced to retreat, and the galaxy watched in stunned silence. Humanity had won not because of superior weapons, but because they refused to follow the rules of warfare. They fought without logic, and it worked. Back on Earth, this victory sent shockwaves through the planet. No one had expected humanity to be able to go toe-to-toe with one of the galaxy's most fearsome military powers. But what truly amazed the galactic community was the human response to the victory. There was no grand celebration, no victory parades. Instead, humans simply shrugged it off. They had won, yes, but they knew it wasn't the end. There was more to be done, more to be explored, and more questions to be answered. Humanity wasn't content to rest on its laurels. It had discovered the power of creative freedom, and now it was unstoppable. Soon after, a wave of invitations came from all corners of the galaxy. Governments, scientific organizations, and even art councils wanted to collaborate with Earth's brightest minds. But instead of being impressed, many of humanity's top leaders were skeptical. They had been invited to join various galactic councils and share their newfound knowledge. But there was a part of them that feared the consequences of being integrated into a system that valued control and predictability. Humanity was different, and they knew it. "We can't just fit in with them," said Dr. Linda Montague, one of Earth's leading physicists, during a heated discussion with galactic delegates. "You want us to give up our ways of thinking, our creativity, and follow your rules. But that's not how we operate. We can't be controlled." Her words were met with stunned silence. The delegates had come to Earth expecting cooperation, a merging of minds. What they didn't expect was a species that not only refused to conform, but also made it clear they had no interest in being anyone's subordinates. In private meetings, some of the more radical factions of the galaxy began to see the humans for what they truly were, a force of nature. They were a species who didn't rely on the power of logic or tradition. They relied on their ability to adapt, to evolve, to thrive on chaos itself. One of the most startling moments came when the Galactic Council, still in shock from humanity's recent successes, asked for a demonstration of Earth's technological prowess. Instead of offering them the latest in weapons technology or theoretical physics, the humans decided to showcase something far more unconventional. The humans sent a single representative, an artist. This artist, Maya Jean, a relatively unknown figure from the backwater art scene, presented her work at the council meeting. It wasn't a sculpture or painting. It was a chaotic, ever-changing holographic projection. The hologram shifted and warped in real time, responding to the thoughts of the people in the room. It was abstract and freeform, but what made it even more astonishing was the message behind it. Humanity's strength lies not in what we can predict, but in what we can imagine. We don't make art just to fit in. We make it to break boundaries, to challenge the way things are. We embrace the unknown because the unknown is where we grow. The projection morphed into a swirling mass of colors, representing both the destruction of old systems and the creation of new ones. It was madness, but it was beautiful. It was exactly what the galaxy had feared and misunderstood about humanity, the ability to create from nothing, to defy logic and expectation, and to shape reality in ways no one else could. The question on everyone's mind was no longer if humanity would rise to dominance, but how they would use their influence. They had already altered the course of history, turning the tide of wars and advancing knowledge in a way no one thought possible. But the true power of the Deathworlders, the galaxy realized, was not in their achievements, it was in their refusal to be bound by the systems that had worked for other species for millennia. Humanity was still young, still learning, but they were no longer a species to be underestimated. They were the wild card of the galaxy, the unpredictable force that no one could control, and in that chaos, they would continue to write their own story, forging a future where the rules were theirs to break. And the galaxy? The galaxy would have to learn how to keep up, or be left behind. As humanity continued to redefine the very essence of the galaxy's structure, the impact of their unconventional approach began to ripple through every corner of civilization. The Deathworlders, as they had been called, were no longer just survivors in a brutal environment, they were now innovators, disruptors, and catalysts for change. Yet despite their rapid rise, there were those who still viewed humanity's rise with suspicion. Many species found the unpredictable nature of Earth's people to be unsettling. The Elorn, an ancient species known for their orderly and hierarchical society, were particularly disturbed by the sheer chaotic freedom humanity embodied. To them, order was everything. Without it, the galaxy would descend into madness. One of the Elorn High Council members, Gorthel, had been observing humanity from a distance. He had seen their successes, their innovations, and their refusal to bow to tradition. But he had also noticed something even more unsettling, the human resistance to being tamed. To Gorthel, this was a direct threat to the established cosmic order. No species had ever challenged the galactic way of life so boldly, and he knew something had to be done. He began to rally support among his fellow council members. The humans are an anomaly, an unpredictable variable that could destabilize the entire galaxy. If we do not act now, we risk losing control of everything we have worked so hard to establish. His warning was met with mixed reactions. Some members of the council were intrigued, impressed by humanity's ingenuity. Others, like Gorthel, saw them as a destabilizing force. A faction of the council, led by Gorthel, devised a plan. They would form an alliance of several powerful species, all united by a common cause, to confront humanity's growing influence and bring them into the fold of galactic order. But Gorthel underestimated one key factor. Their most powerful weapon was no longer their military might or cunning politics. It was their very nature, their unpredictability. Meanwhile, on Earth, a new movement was beginning to take shape. It wasn't a movement led by governments or corporate interests. No, it was something more organic. It was a groundswell of ordinary humans who had seen the vast potential for change in the galaxy, and who wanted to ensure that humanity would remain true to their core principles: innovation, freedom, and the audacity to challenge the status quo. led by a charismatic leader, Aiden Reyes. The movement was a rallying cry for those who saw Earth's future as not merely joining the galactic community, but reshaping it entirely. The group called themselves the Freeborn, a nod to the fact that humanity would not be shackled by anyone's rules, not even the galaxy's most ancient powers. Aiden, who had once been a lowly engineer, stood before a massive crowd in Earth's capital city. His voice, amplified by holoprojectors, reverberated across the square. "We are not here to join their system, we're here to create a new one. One where the rules aren't defined by centuries-old traditions, where creativity is the foundation, not rigidity. We will show the galaxy that humanity will not be controlled. We will lead, not follow." The crowd erupted in cheer, and for a moment, even the most skeptical citizens of Earth began to see themselves as more than just Earth's inhabitants. They were a species destined to change the galaxy forever. Back in the Galactic Council, Gorthel's faction prepared for what they believed would be the final showdown. They had amassed a powerful fleet of ships, coordinated by several species that shared a common purpose: to suppress the human rebellion before it could spiral out of control. Their plan was simple: swift, overwhelming force to put an end to humanity's rise. They chose the perfect moment to strike. Earth was in the midst of its most ambitious project yet, a deep space mission to reach the edge of the known universe. It was a symbolic project, one that showcased humanity's ambition, its desire to reach beyond the stars and challenge the limits of space itself. But the Council had other plans. They would strike at this moment, believing that taking down Earth's most audacious project would shatter humanity's morale and halt their momentum. They launched their attack, swarming toward Earth's orbit with the speed of a predator. The first signs of the attack came as a sudden burst of energy, an unmistakable shockwave across the galactic network. The Freeborn quickly mobilized, calling humanity to arms. This time, however, they were not alone. The other species who had been inspired by humanity's unrelenting spirit of rebellion, creativity, and ingenuity came to their side. The Trelzari, once enemies, now allied with Earth, impressed by how humanity had defeated them in the past. The Xinthians, who had once attempted to control Earth's intellectual processes, now saw humanity as a force they could no longer ignore. Together, they formed a coalition unlike any the galaxy had seen. It wasn't built on politics or ancient treaties, it was based on mutual respect, admiration, and a shared belief in breaking free from the constraints that had bound them all for so long. The battle that followed was one for the ages. The overwhelming might of Gorthel's coalition clashed against the raw, unpredictable strategies of humanity and their allies. No one could predict the outcome. The battle was chaotic, wild, and at times absurd, ships darting in and out of formations, using unconventional tactics that made even the most seasoned military leaders question their own assumptions. And, as always, humanity's unpredictability tipped the scales. A seemingly impossible maneuver, an idea born from an engineer's napkin sketch, turned the tide of battle. Using their new deep space propulsion technology, humanity's forces were able to disrupt the enemy's communication lines, leaving them in disarray. The chaos allowed the Freeborn to overwhelm the fleet, forcing the coalition to retreat. In the aftermath of the battle, the galaxy was forced to confront a new reality. Humanity was not a species to be tamed or controlled. They were an unpredictable force that could not be bent to anyone's will. And this victory, this moment of triumph, marked a new chapter in the galaxy's history, one where the rigid, orderly way of life would no longer hold the same sway. Humanity was here to stay, and they were determined to carve their own path, not as followers, but as leaders. They had proven, once again, that their greatest strength was their ability to embrace chaos, to adapt and evolve when faced with the impossible. And now, the galaxy would have to find a way to live with that truth. Aiden Reyes stood on Earth's Capitol steps, looking out over the millions of people who had gathered to witness the new era. His voice rang out across the crowd, carrying the weight of humanity's bold vision. The galaxy thought we would break. They thought they could control us, but we are not bound by their rules. We are humanity, and we will lead this galaxy on our terms. The crowd erupted in applause, their voices rising as one. And, in the quiet spaces of the galaxy, the realization settled in: the Deathworlders had not only survived, they had mastered the art of rewriting the rules, and the galaxy would never be the same. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy's response to humanity's bold victory was mixed, yet inevitable. Governments that had once underestimated Earth began to re-evaluate their positions, their influence, and their strategies. Humanity's refusal to be controlled had set off a ripple effect, one that even the most established galactic powers could not ignore. The former allies of the coalition who had faced off against Earth in the battle began to reconsider their own systems. For the first time in galactic history, the ideas that humanity embodied, creativity over conformity, adaptability over stability, began to seem less like a threat and more like an opportunity for change, for revolution, for a future that was no longer bound by the stale rules of ancient galactic civilizations. However, not everyone was so keen to embrace this new paradigm. The Elorn, still reeling from their defeat, doubled down on their conviction that order was paramount. The galaxy's oldest race, with their iron grip on tradition, found humanity's success a direct affront to everything they stood for. And they weren't the only ones. The Verdi, an even older species with a focus on intellectual purity, were unsettled. For them, humanity's success was a glaring reminder that intellect could not be distilled into neat formulas. They too feared the unpredictable nature of humanity's rise. But their fear was of a different sort, a fear of losing the absolute control they once believed to be their birthright as the galaxy's intellectual elite. In response to this growing tension, Earth's leaders, now supported by a broad coalition of other species, held a historic summit. The location was symbolic, an ancient space station that had once served as a neutral ground for galactic diplomacy. Now, it was repurposed for the most significant meeting the galaxy had seen in millennia. Aiden Reyes, still the public face of humanity's drive for change, addressed the assembled council. His voice, once filled with defiance, now carried a sense of responsibility. "We've shown the galaxy what we're capable of, but we didn't do it to rule or dominate," he said. "We did it because we believe there's a better way, a way forward. Together, we can still honor the traditions that have brought many of you here, but we must adapt. We must innovate. The old systems are broken, and we're offering a new path, a path built on collaboration, not domination." The leaders in attendance listened, skeptical but intrigued. For the first time, the idea of a collective galactic future that wasn't defined by one species' dominance seemed possible. Some still resisted, believing that humanity's rise was a flash in the pan, a result of mere luck and chaos. But more and more leaders were coming to see the truth. Humanity's raw potential was undeniable. If the galaxy was to survive, it would need to embrace the unpredictability of Earth and its people. In the following months, the freeborn movement began to take root across the galaxy. It wasn't just about Earth anymore. It was about the freedoms and opportunities that humanity had fought for. It was about an end to the entrenched power structures that had held the galaxy back for centuries. Across multiple systems, planets began to form their own coalitions. These were diverse, often volatile alliances formed not out of fear of war but out of the shared desire to escape the confines of outdated traditions and systems. And as the freeborn movement spread, a new kind of peace began to emerge, one that wasn't defined by treaties or compliance, but by understanding and mutual respect for freedom. Still, there were challenges. The Verdi, in particular, attempted to sway the council with their superior intellect and knowledge, trying to maintain the status quo and push back against the changes humanity had set in motion. They argued that the galaxy's progress was built on intellect, logic, and stability, not the reckless abandonment of all rules. "You are attempting to create a galaxy without structure, without guidance," a leading Verdi representative, Sayocaltha, said at a key meeting. "What will you do when the chaos overwhelms you? You cannot just let loose every species' whim. Without order, everything falls apart." Aiden was prepared for such resistance. He knew that the heart of humanity's message was never about throwing out structure entirely. It was about introducing a balance where freedom, creativity, and unpredictable brilliance could thrive alongside the traditions that had built the galaxy. "Order is important," Aiden replied calmly, "but so is freedom. The old system can't be the only way. We need a new kind of order, a more fluid order, one where every species can be themselves, unburdened by rules that no longer make sense. The galaxy's future must be defined by cooperation, not submission." Syokaltha's sharp gaze studied him for a moment. We shall see if your idealism holds. It is easy to talk of cooperation when the galaxy is in your favor. Aiden's smile didn't falter. It's not about favor. It's about what we can build together. And whether you believe it or not, you can't stop change. The galaxy is already moving forward. We're not waiting for permission anymore. Days turned into weeks, and the tension at the summit only grew. The freeborn movement was gaining momentum, but so was the resistance. It seemed like the galaxy was on the cusp of something revolutionary, but no one could predict how it would all unfold. Then, in a turn of events that no one could have foreseen, the unthinkable happened. The Elorn, who had been the most vocal against humanity's rise, suddenly withdrew from the summit. In a statement broadcast across the galaxy, they declared that they would no longer be a part of any galactic order that did not account for the unpredictable forces humanity represented. Their message was clear: if the galaxy was to survive and thrive, it needed to evolve, and they would follow humanity's lead. It was a move that shocked the galaxy. The Elorn had been among the most powerful and influential species for millennia, and now, they were aligning themselves with the very species they had once sought to suppress. It was the final confirmation that the galaxy was changing, and humanity's influence was spreading farther than anyone had imagined. With the Elorn's unexpected defection and the growing momentum of the freeborn movement, the power dynamics of the galaxy began to shift. Slowly, the old power structures began to break down. The Galactic Council became a more fluid body, one that was no longer dominated by a handful of ancient races but was now truly representative of the galaxy's diversity. And in this new era, humanity stood at the center, not as rulers, but as equal partners. Their unpredictable brilliance, their willingness to break the rules, had set the galaxy on a new course. Now, with the weight of history behind them and the future ahead, Earth and its allies would continue to lead the way. The galaxy was no longer bound by the past, it was free to write its own future. And humanity, the Deathworlders, would forever be remembered as the species that tore down the old order and dared to dream of something better. And in the quiet, unseen places of the galaxy, one truth remained clear: chaos, when embraced and directed, could change the universe itself.